An accountant and an international tax practitioner, and I set up my practice RKG Consulting way back in 1985 to deal with accountancy, tax, and immigration issues. Initially, our practice in terms of international tax issues was dealing mainly with inward investment into the UK, mainly from the Indian subcontinent. But we are now, because of the increased focus on emerging markets such as India, we are receiving interest and inquiries from prospects who are interested in investing into India. Real estate, infrastructure, energy and power, pharmaceuticals, as well as IT, and retail even, are the main areas that Western companies ought to be targeting and looking into. And that's mainly because the growth is phenomenal in India. Obviously, there are restrictions into some of these sectors. For example, the retail sector, where full liberalization has not been allowed by the Indian authorities. But the liberalization process is gathering pace, and gradually India is liberalizing the areas that are open to foreign investors. The main issues that the Indian government is concerned about include the fact that Indian retailers should not be put at any kind of economic disadvantage compared to outside investors, because obviously India has been rather a closed shop until recently. So there are rules such as not allowing multi-brand retailing. However, progress is being made slowly. Also, for example, in the finance and insurance sector, where the doors have not been fully thrown wide open, and there are still restrictions as to the percentages of Indian companies or subsidiaries that foreign companies can hold. The IT sector is really more sort of open to foreign investment, in the sense that they need to have or establish an Indian facility for to which they can outsource software development because of the cost effectiveness of Indian software exports. So in that regard, there's obviously a wide skills base available within India to take advantage of, and it can give a Western company considerable market competitiveness and cost advantages if they are able to have or successfully establish an IT or business process outsourcing facility within India. Well, there are huge differences geographically within India. A lot of the, like you mentioned, Bangalore, or for example, it's called India's Silicon Valley, and that's where a lot of the IT companies are based. Bangalore has a very good structure for setting up an IT business or collaborating with an Indian IT business in terms of a Western company trying to add to its cost effectiveness and so on. Hyderabad is very interesting for biotech companies, and the government of Andhra Pradesh, the Indian state where Hyderabad is located, is offering a lot of advantages and opportunities for foreign companies who want to come and invest in the pharmaceutical, drug, and the biotech sectors, including enzyme production, etc. Northern India, there's a lot of infrastructure investing going on, because by Northern India we mean the National Capital Region, or the NCR region, into which New Delhi falls. New Delhi is obviously the capital of India, and the government makes sure that a lot of investment is put into that region to make that world class. The roads, the way the supply chain, the warehousing, and other infrastructure facilities, the government is very keen to develop. There was some government initiative about developing almost like a corridor between the main business states of Maharashtra in the west, Gujarat in the northwest, and Uttar Pradesh and the National Capital Region in terms of having a infrastructure where goods can move very quickly from main ports, such as in Mumbai, the Nhava Sheva port complex, onto other parts of the country. India has made enormous strides in terms of infrastructure development, and a lot of these initiatives are coming to fruition within more or less reasonable timescales. And I wouldn't like to put my hand on my heart and say that it's all bang up to schedule and deadlines and so on. But that you get in every country. But India is making a lot of progress. Obviously, a lot of progress remains to be done because the problems are so huge and immense. But I think India is definitely moving in the right direction. What we would offer for a potential investor who wishes to go into India is give them some idea of the business issues and the investment issues of going into India before they actually incur the cost and the time and trouble of investing into India. We could put them in touch with suitable partners with whom they could form JVs and other alliances who might help them into investing into India in terms of knowing the local infrastructure, etc. And we could help them with the tax, legal, and if necessary, an offshore structure, which could be utilized for investment into India, for example, Mauritius or other places, which have attractive treaties, etc., with India. Obviously, offshore, I'd qualify this by saying that Mauritius is not a truly offshore center because it has tax treaties. A lot of the truly offshore centers don't have tax treaties, but there are, for example, Cyprus and other countries available which are very useful in terms of investment into India and investment out of India. So we as a group could offer all these facilities in a very effective way to potential investors. The principal points or the issues an Indian company investing into the UK might be interested in would be, one, marketing tie-ups with potential partners in the UK, not just for IT companies, but it could be in the field of exports from India, any field really, or technical collaborations with where Indian companies are looking for joint venture collaborations or technical tie-ups or technology transfers from the West to the East. Legal, tax, and immigration issues of investing into the UK and how these may be properly adapted and negotiated so that they can invest into the UK quickly with least hassle and they can get their business going as soon as possible. For investment from the West into India, there are a number of cultural differences in terms of the Western companies and their executives trying to understand how the Indian partner is either taking in what they are trying to get across, or in actually day-to-day dealings. To give a very simple example, it's not a very common practice in India for members of the opposite sex to shake hands at the first meeting. Unless they've known each other for a little while. For example, when a Western gentleman puts out his hand to an Indian lady, it could be taken as being a bit too forward. So these are some of the cultural nuances or issues that certain Western companies may need some exposure to, and this is certainly an area where we as a group might be able to help from our experience of dealing with India over many years. In terms of Indians coming into the UK, there are other issues where obviously in India not everything is cast in stone. A lot of business issues and dealings with authorities are negotiable. In the West, everything is much more codified, it's much more cut and dried. So sometimes it takes a while to explain to clients or potential investors that there are certain things which have to be observed, and once the Indian companies are aware of these, then they adapt very, very quickly. When you talk about expansion into India, it's usually for an objective which is either to increase revenues or to reduce costs. So far, it's been the cost reduction avenue that they've looked at. In terms of increase in revenues, obviously, that's been more an area for the multinationals. For example, the car manufacturing companies, the heavy electrical sector, the large manufacturers of consumer products, large established retail giants. For smaller companies, in terms of expanding into India, unless there's a very niche offering that they have, within India, there's so much competition, and there are already Indian players who are into the small to medium and large players who are into, for example, retail and other sectors. The UK SME has to be very specific and very precise as to what their plans are in terms of expanding into India. For example, if you have a SME here which is doing kind of okay in the online retail sector, for instance, and they want to go into India, a huge market of 500 million consumers. The issues which they have to really think about first is, are credit cards openly used in India? Would they be able to build up volume and business and revenues if people don't use their credit cards? Credit card is increasing, but it's nowhere near seen by Indians as safe as in the West. It's certainly increasing, but they're not there yet. In India, consumers do buy online travel tickets and train tickets, etc., but it's largely from government organizations or very large companies who are well underwritten. But for an unknown player to come within India, a Western company which is not a brand name, a household brand name, established in India, and ask for people to give their credit card information, might not go down very well. I think with the enormous technological leaps that India has at the moment, it's quite easy. Video links, conference calls, internet calls on Skype are a common way in which we communicate, for example, with our Mumbai office. So certainly it's not beyond the means of a lot of SMEs to have their day-to-day dealings with their offices in India or their business partners, etc. But I think in terms of a new company from the West going into India, it's very important to actually travel out to India and meet the business partners, certainly a number of times, and to meet a variety of potential business partners before signing up with one, and then to keep going to India on regular occasions to meet their business partners, not so much to check up or sort of control them, but more or less to be aware of what issues are their business partners are facing in India, and how jointly as a partnership these issues can be overcome. The rule in India, I would say, particularly for SMEs, would be start small, scale up gradually, talk to local people who've done this, been there and done it before, get a very good local partner, and make sure you take advice from the right professional partners.